Hi, I'm Scott Rolph, and welcome to the People's Forum. Today we're going to focus on the crisis in the Middle East. As the crisis moves into its fourth month since the August 2nd invasion of Iraq into Kuwait. Today we have with us Dr. Farouk El-Baz, who's the director of the Center for Remote Sensing at Boston University. Dr. El-Baz was born and raised in Egypt, and he's lived in the United States for 23 years. He's continued to keep in touch with those friends back in Egypt, and also is a good friend of King Hussein of Jordan, who is in a rather precarious political position since the invasion. I guess to start, Dr. El-Baz, if we could address the question that's on everybody's mind, and that is, do you think that we can emerge from this crisis with a peaceful solution?
Yes, I really believe that the peaceful solution is quite possible. Right now we witness the fact that the situation in Iraq is not very good as far as the embargo is concerned. And the more the Iraqi people would feel the effects of the embargo, the more or the less intransigent the Iraqi leadership will be. And I believe that the Arab leadership in the rest of the Arab world is now concentrating its efforts on a peaceful solution. So I think it's quite possible that this would happen soon.
Now, you've been in touch with people back home. Do you believe that the Arab people are attuned with their leaders in opposing Iraq in this situation?
Yes, I had the opportunity recently to visit Saudi Arabia, and one of the things that caught my attention very strongly was the feeling of nationalism that had all of a sudden sprang in Saudi Arabia. People are talking about their country and the defense of their country, and the fact that the royal family is the cement that keeps them all together, and the need to do a little more of that all the time. So I really think that the feelings of nationalism in general are a reflection of the fact that most of the people support their government in the rejection of the aggression of Kuwait against aggression of Iraq against Kuwait.
How do they perceive the United States' presence there?
Everybody is supportive of the United States position. As far as I could tell, most people have a feeling that the United States of America is a good friend. It's a trustworthy friend, and somebody that would jump in the middle to help someone in need. So I think the pro-American sentiment has increased quite a bit.
How about the perception of Saddam Hussein since the invasion? I mean, perhaps you could explain to us how he was perceived before the invasion and how sort of the forces have changed since the invasion.
President Saddam Hussein came to power through a political movement in Iraq called the Ba'ath Party, and the Ba'ath means Renaissance, meaning the Arab Renaissance, meaning that this is the party that will bring back the Arabs to the glory days of the past. And so he is a politician through and through, and he is a calculating man, and no one really there considered him a madman. He just miscalculated this time. And actually, he did also miscalculate at the time when the Iran-Iraq war began, some 8 years ago. So there is quite a bit of feeling about the fact that Saddam Hussein was a leader who feels for his people, who knows about the Arab world, who really wanted a great deal of good to his country. And he came to power, and he was just about to make things look right. But he was faced with that war with Iran. And that, in many ways, dilapidated Iraq. There was a great deal of destruction, a great deal of forgetting all of the infrastructure in Iraq. They forgot about the roads, buildings, and the universities and things like that, because the whole effort of the economy was directed towards the war. And so he came out of that war wounded, and he wanted to respring Iraq back into the fold and do a lot of good. And he immediately recognized that the situation wasn't really amenable because of the fact that he thought that the Kuwaitis were taking some things that were supposed to be his,
Right.
including pumping oil and pumping more oil than they should, driving the oil prices down and so on. And he felt that because he protected not only Iraq, but Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Gulf states from the atrocities of the Iranians, then they should really pay him back and help him to re-establish a good economy for Iraq. And when they were not forthcoming, then he made his move.
Now, as the crisis drags on, do you foresee a situation in which the Arab support will go towards Saddam Hussein as American presence becomes solidified in the region, and it seems as if Saddam Hussein and the Arabs are holding out against the powerful Americans?
I don't really see this at all. The support for Saddam Hussein amongst certain Arabs is very understandable. The President Saddam Hussein, as soon as he began to think about the invasion and what he's going to do next, he immediately announced that he's willing to leave Kuwait if Israel would leave the West Bank. So he threw a whole new card into the equation.
Right.
And because he mentioned that, then all of the Palestinians and all of the people that feel for the Palestinians very strongly said, aha, here is one Arab leader that wants to bring back the rights of the Palestinian people. And they have rights, there is no question about it. And we should talk about them and we should resolve their problems. And so when he did that, then he received an instantaneous support among these people. And all of the demonstrations that we have been seeing in Amman, Jordan, and in other places are from that. Specifically, Palestinians who live in Jordan today that have very little option for the future. They are not educated, they don't have good housing, they have no future, and their country has been taken over by the Israelis, and they don't see any future for themselves. And here is the one man that said something positive about their rights, so they support him. So all of the support that you see is overemphasized and overplayed, and it is also understandable because it's amongst people that have been bitten and they feel betrayed, and here is somebody that is coming to speak on their behalf, so they have to support him.
Now, it has put Arab leaders in difficult political positions. For instance, King Hussein,
Yes.
a friend of yours,
Yes.
who is facing a populace that is generally in support of Saddam Hussein, or has been for the early part of the crisis, and yet he has friends in the United States. He
Yes.
certainly leaned towards the West, as you've mentioned. What sort of balance is he trying to strike, and is he in an impossible political situation so that when the crisis ends, he may not be in power?
Yes, King Hussein is in an incredibly difficult position, and I really don't think that he could have done any differently. We mentioned the number of his population amongst the Palestinians. In addition to that, he has Israel on the left side, and the Israeli government is very intransigent about making a deal with the Arab countries. And Iraq is on the right side, and Iraq is his only outlet. In some years back, many Jordanians used to go to the Gulf states to work. And because of the glut of oil, most of these people had to return back to Jordan. No new jobs, no income. And the only outlet to them was Iraq, because Iraq was rebuilding after the war, and they could go to Iraq and work there. The only market for Jordanian products like fruits and vegetables and things like that was Iraq. And Iraq was the only country that was giving King Hussein a great deal of oil. And so he had huge relationships with Iraq, and he can't all of a sudden sever all of these relationships because his population would suffer. So he has certainly been in a very tough position, and he's taking the best possible route, in spite of the fact that he is a very good friend of President Bush, and he certainly has affiliations more with the West than with anybody else.
Right, so he's in a difficult position. How do they perceive the United States? Do they feel that we're there for economic self-interest? Do they feel that, as President Bush says, we're not going to allow that kind of naked aggression to take place in the world? Or do they understand the complexity of the situation and feel there's a little bit of both?
Most people believe that the United States is in there because of a matter of principle. And this is very important because the support that the United States of America has received from other Arab countries is due specifically to that. No other Arab country like Egypt or Syria could have gone wholeheartedly with the United States if it was only the protection of oil fields. So it is definitely, it's a matter of principle. They want to protect the right of a small state that has just as many rights as any other state, and they wanted to protect the state of Saudi Arabia. So there is more involved than just oil. So I really think they know that the United States is in there for these major principles rather than just the protection of the oil fields.
Right. And does, I guess, indications that the United States is moving away from its alliance with Israel, does that support that perception of the situation? For instance, the recent vote in the UN to censor Israel in light of the violence.
I don't really think the United States of America is moving away from support of Israel at all. I mean, the United States could not have done it any other way. I think the United States is still supporting the state of Israel, and it's still protecting the state of Israel, but there are limits. When it comes to something like what was done in the United Nations, I don't really think the United States could have done any other way. And now the Arabs believe that when all is said and done, the United States of America is going to recognize the fact that the situation vis-a-vis the Israelis and the Palestinians must be resolved if we are to have a lasting peace in the region.